they wheeled me into a room and sectioned off the area to sequester us from the rest of the hospital, giving enough room that Blaze could be in the room with me as well. And they set the gurney in a place, and one of the nurses explained that they were about to give me an IV. So
hang on. What right do you have to tell this story? You were mostly unconscious.
I had destiny. I still have destiny. I can tell this story.
I think I know it a little bit better than you, but okay.
You were gone by this point. I just told you afterward.
She's got a point.
That was literally everything that I told you.
You just had a major medical crisis. You probably forgot.
She's got a point.
Also, just, I've been thinking this the whole time I've been saying, where did you get this map? Like, there are a lot better ones than this. Like, a lot more updated and more colorful.
I like this one, okay?
It looks like butcher paper.
It's got the Profithian on it. It makes it cool.
Where'd you even get it? Like, the archives?
It's a cartographer.
That's antique.
What cartographer?
We have a cartographer.
Yeah, sure. But again, there's, libraries full of more interesting maps than this. You had to go to the cartographer and get a fancy one that doesn't look good. Sure.
Or you could just...
I really want to say something right now.
Go to the sky above there.
Don't want to get smacked by Scar.
It's a good choice.
You just gotta decide if it's worth it.
It never is.
Let's restart this chapter.
Long enough.
Yeah, good thing you chose an easy spot.
Chapter 18. By the time that Blaze and I got back to the Keltis, Scar was already there, gate in hand. She explained that her travelers had sent chaos through some of the gates connected to Earth, and they'd grabbed those. I trusted Destiny to get the Seer Guard there and to make happen what needed to happen. In the meantime, Scar said we needed to deal with... Well, Darren was going to meet us so that we could deal with the chaos on this side of the portal. I said, Darren, isn't he still healing? And she said, Falair said that he was done healing days ago. She said, you're so blind, G. I think it's cute. Don't worry. She kissed me and I didn't have time to focus on what was happening. We had to deal with this problem. Darren showed up a minute later, traveling to Saramea, his hand on the shoulder of Andrew. And I said, Andrew, we cannot babysit you right now. And he said, hey, I'm the ones that told you guys about this in the first place. Darren, at least, he's the only one that picked up his phone. And I said, sorry, I was mobilizing an army of seers. He said, anyway, school's out the window with aliens attacking the Earth. And he said, I'm coming with you guys. I didn't have time to deal with that. I trusted he would run and hide as soon as the chaos started. So with that, I reached for the portal that Scar was holding and took us through to utter chaos. It was like a scene from War of the Planets. Washington, D.C. was being attacked by aliens. People were running for cover as their hiding places were being shot down by green alien lasers as troops of Profithians were running through, shooting people down. The ground was being thrown up in chunks by laser blasts, and there was large artillery of some kind that the Profithians were pulling out. It was utter chaos. Talonthorn was good, but I was going to need something a little bit more long range for this. And I reached into my scabbard, pulling out a gun back from Nightfall. And I screamed out, calling Profithian attention to us. They'd already seen us by this point, and hot lasers sizzled through the air past me as I ran forward. I hit the ground. The gun had fallen from my fingers, and I heard Scar's name call out to me. I looked, I was on the ground and looked down to see that my leg was a bloody mess. Green ISO shrapnel sticking out the leg in places and scattered all up through the rest of my body. I had no idea what had just happened, and I was still trying to comprehend what was going on. Nothing hurt, but I felt this sense of horror looking down at my leg. Scar threw herself over me, using her lightsaber to block ISO blasts. As Andrew ran forward, grabbed the gun that I'd dropped, and in 6 shots shot down 6 Profithians. I was definitely dreaming. Scar reached into her pocket and pulled out a Purple's Feel It ISO and went to hold it over my leg, but as it got close to the green ISO that was inside my leg, the crystal began to bleed green, and the shrapnel began to glow brighter, and Scar pulled the crystal away and put it back in her pocket. And she said, "G, I'm going to take you back to Saramea." But Darren had caught up to this point and he said, No. He said, "That's a very volatile ISO that they're using. If you travel, it's only going to power it. It might kill him." And Scar said, "Okay." And she said, "All right, I'm going to get you to a hospital then." And I said, "No, I'm fine. I can fight. I just can't stand." And Scar said, "Nope, you're in shock. We're going." And I said, "No, I need to help you guys." And a gravelly voice to the side of us said, "We've got this." I looked to the side where Darren had been standing a moment ago was a dragon with molten rock for skin. It charged down the street and with a cleft of a wing took down one of the Profithian tanks. That's the best thing I can say for it. And took down a screaming Profithian with one of his legs. Yeah, no, they had this. And I finally nodded to Scar, and she scooped me up in her arms and took off. She confronted a civilian that was hiding behind a car and got them to tell her where the nearest hospital was. And with that, she took off into the air, me still in her arms. My leg jostled a little bit. Her flight wasn't the smoothest. But it didn't hurt. That was likely going to be a problem. We landed fairly quickly as Scar found the hospital and rushed inside. There were no Profithians here, so it must have been in very close, or like little pockets that the Profithians were attacking Earth. But as we made our way in, people watching the TV screens in the waiting room were seeing shots of the fighting on the news. So it was definitely getting out there, and people were kind of freaking out. And Scar called out, "We need a medic!" And everyone kind of jumped and looked and pointed to the receptionist, who coiled back as Scar stalked forward, fire in her eyes, as she took me up to the desk. And the receptionist said, "If you can just fill out some paperwork, we'll help your friend." And Scar said, No paperwork. Your land is being attacked right now, and we need to get this taken care of. At about that same time, Blaze caught up to us, and the automatic doors opened, and the flaming unicorn stepped into the room. And the receptionist nodded faintly and raced back out of sight. A few moments later, a team ran through doors further in from the ER with a gurney, and one of the one of the nurses asked how this had happened, or like what was happening, and Scar said, alien crystals are poisoning him and we need to get them out right now. Everything else can happen later. The universe needs this man. And I'm sure these workers had seen some crazy things working in the ER, but alien crystals and Pokemon seem to be a little bit out of their league. And they, Scar was forcible enough, and I could tell she was using her magic at this point. They just nodded and moved to start taking me back. Before they could, I reached out and grabbed Scar's arm. By this point, I was a little bit more lucid. My legs still didn't hurt, which still worried me, but I grabbed Scar's arm and I said, you need to get back and stop the Prophithians. And she said, no, I'm not going to leave you, especially if you can't sire. You need protection. And I said, Scar, we need to stop the Prophithians. She finally turned to Blaze and she said, don't you leave his sight. And Blaze huffed and stepped up to the gurney, which made the medical personnel shy back a little bit. Scar said, I love you. Be careful. And with that, she raced out the doors, and I nodded for the medical personnel to take me back. They led me back with Blaze trotting alongside into a room painted with cool colors and it had curtains in it. They gave us enough space that Blaze could sit in the corner. Thankfully, he'd cooled down his flames so they weren't scorching the ceiling or anything. But the nurses were still a little alarmed to have Blaze in the room. A few of them left once we'd gotten into place. Two of them stayed. One was a younger woman, and she just had no idea what was going on. The other one, early 30s, was controlling herself well, despite the situation. And she said, our friend Chelsea is going to get a surgeon. In the meantime, we're going to get you an IV. Is that okay? And I said, are you not going to knock me out? And she said, we're still not sure. If you're in shock, no. Plus, we don't want to do anything drastic because we don't know what this crystal is doing. So we're going to not do too much. It's not radioactive or anything, is it? And I said, no, you're fine. And as they went to prepare the IV, she continued to talk to me. She asked me what my name was, and I said G. And she said, like the letter? I said, well, it's short for Reggie. She said, oh, that's a very normal name. Where are you from, Reggie? And I said, I'm from California. She exchanged a glance with the other nurse. I could tell they were surprised to find out that I was American. I didn't have an accent, but everything else going on. And she continued to ask me questions as they got the IV ready. And she said, all right, we're going to put this in. Can you tell your friend that it's going to be okay? And I said, he can understand you. His name's Blaze. And I said, I'll still tell him. And I looked and I said, hey, buddy, they're going to put this needle in my arm. It's just like the Poke Center. Okay, it's all right. Stay there. And he huffed, but went down to rest on the ground, which didn't look very comfortable for him, but it put the nurses at ease, which I think was what he was going for. And I held my breath as the nurse took out a wipe and wiped my arm and went to put in the needle. In the last few months, I'd faced hordes of aliens, vast worlds, and the forces of destiny itself. But getting an IV in was worse than the mission to Malad. Watching the needle and expecting it and knowing I couldn't do anything was absolutely horrid, and I felt it go in, I could feel it there in my veins, and she taped the IV down and attached it to a bag of morphine to help with the pain as we got ready for the operation. Oh, I could still feel it there. Now, as we'd been talking, pain had started to come to my leg, which was a good sign. It also hurt, like, a lot. And it continued to grow. The morphine helped with that, but not enough. And my leg began to throb in pain. I was definitely very lucid at this point. It was actually really amusing to watch the nurses try to take all of this in. I wasn't sure. I didn't think I was in shock. I wasn't sure if it was because of feather life and just the latent power that I was drawing from that, or if it was because of the Zelen ISO and whatever was happening with that. Either way, I was pretty conscious as they explained what was going on, and the talkative nurse explained that the doctor was going to come in and try to clean out what he could, and she said, we may have to cut away some of your clothing, like some of your uniform, around the leg to try to get to the shrapnel. I said, I wish you luck. It's pretty tough, but do what you can. And she nodded, and I think that was that. Before long, the surgeon came in. He had a clipboard and introduced himself as Dr. Carnia. And he said, we're going to do what we can for you. He said, I'll be honest, I've never seen anything quite like this. He said, but I have dealt with shrapnel before, and it's not that hard a process. He said, we feel fairly comfortable putting you under, if that's what you'd like. He said, the one problem that I can see, usually shrapnel is metal, and that's very easy to see under an x-ray machine. Crystal, not so much. He said, we also don't want to use an x-ray machine if that's going to aggravate the crystal. And I said, an x-ray is basically just light, right? And he said, yes, an intense light, past what we can see. And I said, that should be fine. Light actually dampens ISO, so that might help. And I said, all right, then we'll continue with that. He said, one last thing before I put you under. We don't have any paperwork for you, insurance or anything. And in case something goes wrong, or even if everything goes right, we want to know who we can contact for bills or anything else. And I said, well, my world doesn't have insurance quite yet, but don't worry. We can absolutely take care of payment or anything that happens. We just need this crystal out of my leg. And I could tell he wasn't satisfied with that, but it was the best we could give him. And he said, all right, the nurse, I'll send in a nurse to put you under. And as we waited, I looked at Blaze. I said, what am I doing here? And he opened his eyes and turned his face to the side, and I said, I'm the Emperor of Saramea. I'm sitting in a hospital bed. I thought that I was done with normal life things. And Blaze kind of threw his head to the side as if he were shrugging. I said, I guess the same is true for you. I had no idea that you were such a strong traveler. And he just kind of huffed, and before long the nurse came in and put me under. When I woke up again, there was someone calling my name, and I opened my eyes and opened my mouth, breaking through the mucus film that had formed between my lips. I felt so tired. It took me a minute to realize that it was Andrew that was calling my name and shaking my arm gently. As I looked around the room, I could see the nurses did not want him to be doing that, but you can't stop Andrew. That's just who he is. Um, yeah, he said, gee, you've got to wake up. And he said, there's a video call you need to join. I said, what? That was the most distressing thing I had heard all day. I didn't want to move. I don't know if I could move. I looked down at my leg and it had been wrapped up in cotton, which actually was a lot more protective than I thought it would be. And I didn't want to join a video call, but Andrew said half of the UN is on this call. I said, what? This one was a little bit more distressed than the first. And he said, okay, that's an exaggeration, but they're not going to leave us alone until they can talk with you. And I was in no condition to talk with them. I groaned and tried to pull myself up further. And I guess Andrew took that as a yes, because he nodded to Scar, who opened the door, and I could hear Darren on the phone in the hallway, and she waved him in. Darren came in, and it looked like he did not want to make me do this. The nurses didn't either, but Scar grabbed the phone from him, and Andrew pulled out a little table thing that was on the hospital bed and set the phone in front of me, and I thought, oh no. I tried to look as alert and not dead as I could as I looked at this video call. I didn't recognize most of the faces, but the ones I recognized, I definitely recognized. Yeah. I was kind of terrified to be on this call with these people. And I said, Your Excellencies, it's a pleasure to see you. And one of them spake, I can't remember his title, very important person worldwide. And he said, Emperor G, your representative Darren has been telling us about what's been going on, but we want to hear from you and what the implications are with this. He looked at his notes, Profithian attack. What is going on? I muted myself, and now he used much fancier words, but I turned to the others and I said, what is going on? Did we win? And Darren said, yes, we fought them back. Militaries reacted quickly. Our Seer Guard was able to come and help in multiple places, and they're mostly back there too, waiting to be picked up, but everything is safe for right now, and the Profithians have retreated. And I unmuted myself and I said, well, we've taken care of this attack and we're moving back to Saramea to make sure this doesn't happen again. And the same person said, and what are you doing to make sure that this doesn't happen again? What are our assurances that we're going to be safe? And now that you've revealed yourselves to us, what's the course that the world is going to take? I muted myself again. I said, Darren, you were an ambassador, right? I said, well, technically, yes. And I unmuted myself before I could continue. I said, for further questions, you can talk to our Director of Interdimensional Affairs, Darren. And I grabbed the phone and tossed it to him. And Darren caught it and, exasperated, went out of the room with a look of frustration and pity. And he walked out and closed the door after him. Scar and Andrew burst into laughter as I just collapsed in the bed. And the nurses, there was just the one nurse, the talkative one, and she had no idea what to think about the rest of it. I took a minute to just wake up a little bit, and finally reached into my scabbard and pulled out a piece of Feel It ISO, and I rested it on my leg, and the nurse came to help me sit up a little bit. As I just kind of came back to, I asked the nurse if she could take out the IV, and she said, "You may still want it to help with the pain." And I said, "No, I'll be good. We have Feel It ISO for that." And I could tell she was hesitant, but she still helped take the IV out, and used a piece of gauze to wipe away at the blood that dribbled out. Just having that gone was a big thing for me. Oh, I was able to move again, and she went to bandage up the arm, but before she could, I put a piece of Feel It ISO there, and seconds later I moved it away, and the pinprick was gone. And the nurse looked at it incredulously, inspecting my arm, as Scar reached out and pulled out another piece of Feel It ISO that was a deeper purple than my own, and she rested that next to mine, which was paler, even after just the little bit that it had been healing me. We'd been learning that how deep the color of ISO was showed how much charge it had. I guess because there were different kinds of ISO. The purple ISO took in sound energy and released healing energy, or like creativity, and so you could recharge them with sound. And we still didn't quite understand, but Kessel was working on a way to learn how to better discharge the crystals. And anyway, she put it there, and the nurse was incredulous as she looked at these crystals, and she said, "This could change the world." And Andrew said, "I hope not." He said, "Yeah, if this world got a hold of ISO, could you imagine markets would collapse and nations would be on top of each other for just a piece of this crystal?" And it was absolutely true, but I could see the longing in the eyes of this nurse. And I mean, yeah, it was incredible stuff. And oh, right, I forgot that. Also, before that little bit of conversation, I went to pull away at the covering on my leg, and the nurse had tried to stop me. She said there was quite a bit of skin that was taken off with the shrapnel, and it's going to take a while for healing. I said, "That's all right." And I pulled off the covering and pulled away at the bits of cotton that were there. And there were definitely still lines where my skin had been broken, but judging off of the nurse's face, it was a lot better than it had been before. But yeah, I could see how much good this crystal could do on Earth. I pulled out a small piece, no bigger than my thumbnail. And I said, "You've helped me. Thank you." I said, "I'm going to give you this crystal, but don't tell anyone that you have it. Only use it in the direst emergencies, and only use it in secret." And Scar said, "Didn't we just say that this could destroy the world?" I said, "Yes." But looking into the nurse's eyes, even without Destiny, I could tell that I could trust her. And I said, I trust you'll do good with this." She nodded and slipped it into her pocket. And I said, "All right, it's time to get going." The nurse said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll be fine. I can heal further on the way." And I put my legs over the edge of the bed, and she said, "At the very least, you want crutches or something?" And I said, in response, I stood up, or I tried to, and immediately fell back into the bed, my leg crumpling underneath me. Okay, I wasn't perfectly healed. I sighed and I said, "All right." And she went to go get crutches. When she came back, I talked with her about payment, that we would send somebody to get gold or something. We would pay them and get that taken care of. And with that, Scar told Darren that we were headed back. He nodded and went to finish the call. I went back with Scar and Andrew back to Saramea. When we came back to the Keltis, the square was covered with people, Saramayans, and they cheered when I came back. I was surprised to see them all there, and I looked at Scar and I said, "Did you have anything to do with this?" And she shrugged, but smiled, satisfied. And she said, "What? We were worried about you." And I said, "That shows a lot of faith in my abilities." And she said, "It shows that we care about you. Juke, can't you take a compliment?" And I just smiled and waved at the people. I thought, well, it is nice to know that even if I'm useless, sometimes without destiny, I'm loved. People care about me. And that meant a lot. End of chapter 18.